Alright, so we came into this year's Roland Garros calling the draws unbalanced, it being kind of top heavy, right? And me personally, I felt that way, but I felt that it wasn't as top heavy as we saw it last year with Nadal, Djokovic, Zverev, Alcaraz all in a half. At the end of the day, you looked at this draw when it came out, and in the bottom half, you had some really formidable contenders who, albeit odds wouldn't be in their favor against a Djokovic or an Alcaraz in the final, but they certainly could put up a fight and certainly were in with the puncher's chance. And you had two of those three guys that you would have considered in that mix in the bottom half, in Daniil Medvedev and Jannik Sinner. Did not see it past the second round. In fact, Daniil Medvedev, he did not end up seeing it past the third day of the tournament. And now, for the second year running at this tournament, I look at the bottom half and I can see a wide variety of guys making a deep run here. Obviously, you still have your favorites in there with Holger Rune and Casper Ruud, but certainly neither guy you would consider an immovable object, and particularly for certain names in the draw, it's certainly doable for them to, spring an upset on either guy. And among that bottom half, if we've learned anything through this first week, it's that, nobody there is not prone to an upset. So with all that being taken into account, all the opportunities on the board for a laundry list of guys, I just want to take some time to discuss how we got here. And going on that track, let's just start with Daniil Medvedev. Obviously, I picked him to go to the final, and hindsight is 2020. But I really can't say that I feel like that was a terrible pick from the get-go. I do understand some people, if they still had some skepticism in trusting Medvedev on clay enough to pick him to the final, that's totally fair. But, Clayvedev seemed legit, especially Rome, but even that aside, he'd shown signs of improvement all clay court season long, brimming with confidence, and, I thought I had a great draw. But this wasn't a case of, feeling he was the clear-cut finalist. It was more, right place at the right time, where he avoided Djokovic, Alcaraz, Rune, just beat him at Rome, and you have the physical advantage over him, especially in best of five, considering I think Holger still needs a body transformation to get there. And Jannik Sinner, he has had his number, 6-0 lifetime, albeit I definitely felt like those could be very close matches, especially the Sinner one. I felt that in that matchup, Medvedev would, beat him by a hair. But now we know that match isn't going to happen on either counts. And, saying Medvedev had a great draw, well, that first round, once we knew who the qualifier was, turns out just not meant to be for Daniil. On the flip side, Thiago Seyboth-Wild deserves a boatload of credit for his end in this match. To be completely honest, heading into this match, I'd heard the name. I know now that, he was making good progress pre-pandemic break, but beyond that, not really familiar with his results, his game, until this match. Until this tournament, really. But he definitely deserves all the credit in the world. He was the much superior ball striker in this match, and it wasn't particularly close. Those were two things that I felt Medvedev in this match didn't really resemble his clay court season self at all. Was the forehand that had carried the day through much of this spectacular winning streak post-Australian Open for Daniil. And then the serve, which has always been such a source of, easy offense for Medvedev. Not a good serving day at all for him. 15 double faults, a lot of them super untimely. And off the ground, he was just super passive, just rolling balls over. I think pretty early in this match, he recognized that he didn't have it. You add on, his opponent, inspired on the day, and, continuing to apply tons of scoreboard pressure. And Medvedev kind of went back to a default. Once the ball was in play, he really just walled up and pretty much said, you're going to have to hit a lot of balls and you're going to have to hit through me to win this match. And to Seyboth-Wild's credit, he did exactly that, especially at the back end of this match. You could argue for 4 out of 5 sets he was the better player. Kind of choked at the back end of the second set tiebreak. I think he had 6-4 in the breaker and had some very makeable forehands that probably would have put the set away. But having escaped from that second set hole that Medvedev was in, and then carrying that momentum over into steamrolling the third set, that was another thing in this match that really stood out and probably was a difference maker. Medvedev's lack of clutchness. All credit to Thiago Seyboth for stopping the bleeding on several occasions, but you can't say Daniil Medvedev did not assist him on several occasions. Fourth set, Seyboth got out to a quick 3-0 lead. Daniil Medvedev got it back on serve to 2-3. And then we saw a trend that kept up through the end of this match, where Medvedev just didn't allow himself to ride his own momentum. Immediately got broken back at 2-3, and, that carried through the end of the fourth set. Fifth set again, Seyboth got out to a 2-0 lead. Medvedev got it back to 2-all. And in those cases, so many times, you see the top guys really applied the scoreboard pressure, and Daniil kind of just refused to pull ahead despite serving first in the set. Seyboth did waver a couple times in that fifth set. Daniil broke him 2 times to pull back on serve, and I don't know how else to put it other than, he just didn't show a lot of killer instinct. And at the end, Thiago Seyboth made some spectacular forehands to close this match. He did exactly what was required of him. Medvedev made him play, and he made all those plays with the cracking forehand. But at that point, Medvedev gave him so many bites at the apple that by the end, he was pretty much unfazed and closed the biggest win of his career to this point with just some fearless forehands. In retrospect, maybe goofy to just throw Medvedev up as a third favorite for this tournament, particularly off the one result in Rome in the lead-up. But as I said, this really felt like, right place at the right time for Medi, and considering that, it's a super disappointing end to the best clay court season of his career to this point. And then, when talking about his potential quarterfinal opponent in Jannik Sinner, after Medvedev went out, this was not only a great opportunity for Sinner to make his first semifinal of his career in a slam, but it became a golden opportunity to potentially make his first final. And with that being the case, as well as his consistency even in slams as of late, this loss is definitely going to sting for Jannik, because it wasn't at the hands of one of those tier 1 guys, as it has been the last couple slams for him. That too by the smallest margins against, Tsitsipas at the Aussie, Alcaraz barely at the US Open, Djokovic in 5 at Wimbledon. This one, though a marathon match, was at the hands of Daniel Altmaier in the second round. And also, it felt like Jannik Sinner was, physically ready now. Didn't seem like the body was going to be a determining factor like it was at Roland Garros a year ago. And again, with a match like this, you gotta give the underdog a boatload of credit. Daniel Altmaier played out of his skin for basically all of the 5.5 hours they played. Dude was zoning off a one-handed backhand in a way that I haven't seen in a very long time. And the guy certainly came lacing his shoes up ready to run. And as a result, in, these slow conditions and balls that the players have been vocal about, make it all the more slow. Forgot to mention that as far as the Medvedev match was concerned, but that was also very much in play, particularly on the Medvedev side. But even here, a guy like Jannik Sinner, who is, as clean a ball striker, having as much brute power as just about any guy on tour, it felt like Altmaier really had him, scratching his head and looking for some answers and ways to finish these points, because for much of the match, the line drive power wasn't really doing it. And that really shined a magnifying glass on, Sinner's need for improvement in some of these finesse areas of the game. When hitting through an opponent becomes that hard, coming into net becomes all the more important. And too often, the Sinner forecourt game and net play just was not cutting it. And, again, in spite of that, Jannik did have his chance to finish this off in 4, and he probably should have. Obviously, you look to him having 2 match points on his serve at 5-4, but really the entire game, Sinner seemed like he was rolling the ball in, not really going for his shots, and, to boot, not finding the big serves when he needed them. And unfortunately for Jannik, I feel like that's a bit of a familiar story with him when the chips have been down at times. Maybe just how heavy the reliance is for him on just precision power tennis might have something to do with it, and obviously the serve still, I think, a work in progress. But whatever the case, it seemed like Jannik kind of needed to win there because he was looking a bit jaded even late in the 4th, and through the 5th, Altmaier was, clearly the fresher player to me. Sinner still competed exceptionally well through the end. Even in the last game of the match that, he went down 40-love, it looked like he was going to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. In fact, it looked like, we might see a little bit of deja vu because in the 4th set, one of Sinner's match points, obviously, he had an overhead that he kind of played too safe, right down the middle, and Altmaier didn't really have to guess and passed him with, let chord forehand winner. But I think Altmaier's 4th match point, he also had an overhead, and Sinner went the right way and absolutely cranked a forehand cross. And I believe it was after that match point that Sinner brought up, a couple of his own breakpoint opportunities. I want to say 3 in total, but I remember 2, very vividly that Sinner should have had. And the very last one in particular, the break was basically in the palm of his hands because he got a look at an overhead on a lob that was not particularly deep. I'm not sure that it was on top of the net, but it was pretty close, and Sinner could have hit it so that Altmaier would have had no shot at it. And he just didn't do enough to put it away. Point reset, ended with a Sinner unforced error, and I think he ended up throwing his racket to the ground. Very rarely see Sinner lose his cool like that, but, he knew the weight of that miss. He knew the weight of that moment. He had the break, and he knew it. But again, on the underdogs, and you cannot overstate how impressive it was by Daniel Altmaier to never really waver in spite of, all the opportunities in the world to get tight. He finished this match with an ace. Remarkable second round match. As good as you're going to see this year. And it definitely was super moving seeing Altmaier move to tears by, the ovation, the moment. Really beautiful moment there at the end of that match. But on the Jannik Sinner side of things, you could see in this match how visibly crushed he was. Super rough beat. There's no doubt about it. And it's a loss that I think in the bigger picture does highlight, the room for growth in some of those finesse areas, the serve. Areas where no doubt, Sinner's gotten much better at. They're at least prevalent in his game now. And these are still, minor flaws, I would say, that you can work with at Sinner's age still. But as displayed in that match against Altmaier, they're, minor flaws that can make life a whole lot more difficult than they need to be. I'm sure he'll be able to continue improving those areas. We'll see to what extent. But overall, yeah, huge missed opportunity. And then getting to the rest. Talking about what a huge opportunity it was for 2 of the 3 favorites in this half. Now you really look at a situation where a whole lot of guys, you could easily see them making the semifinals in a way that, last year Marin Cilic made the semis of Roland Garros for the first time in his career. Plenty of veteran guys like that this year you could entertain to the same possibility that, have an opening now. Holger Rune is the favorite to make the final now. And I think the second round Monfils walkover bolsters that case as well because, I think energy and conserving it is going to be of the utmost importance for Holger as he gets deep into this tournament. And then you start going down the line. Casper Ruud, huge chance, at back-to-back Roland Garros finals. Matches up well with Holger Rune in the past. has a real chance. If he can get some rhythm and traction going, he can definitely salvage his season with a big result here. You got a lot of guys left that I consider dark horses at the beginning of the tournament, including Francisco Cerundolo, Thomas Martin Echeverry, and Nico Yari. All guys that know their way around a clay court and have really flourished on it this season so far. Real chance for any one of those guys to make the biggest result of their careers to this point. If you ask me, none of the obstacles that are going to be ahead of them are insurmountable for any of them. I would say, at the very least, to make the second week with the fourth round, maybe even potentially the quarter. You still have a couple of our top American guys in it, in Taylor Fritz and Francis Tiafoe. Taylor's become the most reliable American by far. I think you can already call his clay court season a success, even though he's going to have his hands full against Francisco Cerundolo, and then likely Holger Rune if he can make it through that. For Francis, on the other hand, big improvement on clay this year. He was largely incompetent on the surface until this year. That's changed this year, and obviously since the US Open last year, he's been a different player, different confidence, and I think he's definitely in with a chance against a Sasha Zverev who isn't at his most confident at the moment, and, has not been able to yet replicate the level that he had at this tournament a year ago. On the flip side, though, speaking of Sasha Zverev, to begin with, he looked a whole lot more convincing in his last match against Alex Molcan, and Zverev, given his capability on clay, as well as the section he's in this half, where he's not going to have to face Rune or Ruud, and he's only going to have to face one of them, but he won't have to face them till the semis. A real opportunity here for him to get his first big result of the year, and potentially kickstart his comeback and this season, after that ankle injury a year ago at this very tournament did him in. But right now, he's in a very wide open quarter. Doesn't really mean much because it's not by much right now, given the state he's in with form and confidence. But tentatively, you might have to say he is a favorite to come out of his quarter right now. The other guy I would throw into that mix is Grigor Dimitrov, who, I laugh because it's kind of insane to think about the fact that Grigor Dimitrov right now is the second oldest guy left in this draw at the moment. But he's a guy who's been around the block. He's made the semis at the other three majors, and this season he's playing quite a bit better than he has the last 3 or 4. So definitely the window is there for him as well to do something similar to what Cilic did last year. Point is, a long list of guys that you could see doing damage in this bottom half, given how things have shaken up so early in the tournament. And then, of course, in the top half, things have mostly been going according to plan. Overall, looking like a super fascinating state of affairs as we head into the second week of Roland Garros. But that will do it for this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, it'd be much appreciated if you could hit the like button. Only takes a second and helps the video perform a lot better in YouTube's algorithm, and also subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you all again so much for watching, and of course, I will see y'all in the next one.